We're going to show you two beginnings to this profile. We could start our introduction this way. Or, using the identical pictures, we could try something like this. What you've just seen is a simple demonstration of how music can influence your feelings about things. Depending on which theme went with the picture you saw, you might have thought the person was threatening or heroic. And actually, he is a performer of sorts because he's the man who wrote and conducted the music that changed the scenes.
1, 2, 3.
John Williams has become a more public figure since 1980, when he replaced the late Arthur Fiedler as conductor of the Boston Pops Orchestra. But as a composer who's written the scores for more than 60 films, his music has influenced the way audiences around the world have felt in movies that wouldn't have been the same without his unseen presence. He supplied the primitive, menacing score in Jaws. The theme that allowed Earth people and aliens to communicate in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. His music added to the magic in E.T. and helped Superman fly as well. And his score for Star Wars, which sold more than 4 million albums, helped familiarize a generation of young people with the sounds of a symphony orchestra. Most of the musical scores he's written for some of the best-known movies of the last 20 years have been carefully bound and fill 4 rows of bookshelves in his home. For someone who has set so many of our deepest fears and most adventuresome fantasies to music, he is soft-spoken. But he's helped speak for some of your favorite characters through his music.
Everybody knows from music one, I mean, you have a minor chord and a major chord, minor being sort of unhappy and the major being happy and clear. Darth Vader's tune, you may remember, is this one. It's a sort of stately, imperial, ominous theme for a not very nice guy, done in all low brass and trombones and tubas and so on. Very different from Luke Skywalker, who is which is all sunny and up and positive, our hero.
Williams also likes to illustrate how even the most basic principles of music can be used to influence your perception of things like how fast a shark is moving.
I think I would probably start with a sequence of film, Bob, that I could show the idea of tempo.
Turn off that engine.
All those little various tempos, if you stretched them over and applied them to a piece of film, the film would change. Moving slower with one piece of music and faster with another piece of music where the shark is swimming toward the boat. Should it be like this, or should it be, or should it do this? The film seems different. It seems longer or shorter or faster or slower.
That's a 20-footer. 25.
It's an art that hasn't been studied very much, seriously, I don't think we know really very much about in a scientific or clinical way about what we're trying to do. We can sense the result of it, particularly when it's effectively done.
Just be sure you match rhythmically the quavers. Yeah?
Unlike most composers, Williams is also a skilled conductor.
All right. Dim, daga daga da da. Dim, daga daga da da. 1, 2, 41.
A few months ago in London, he spent 9 intense days with the London Symphony Orchestra, conducting his score for Return of the Jedi. A print of the completed film is projected where Williams can see it as he conducts. The lines you see moving across the screen and the quick flashes are visual cues specially marked on this print to help Williams synchronize the orchestra's tempo with the film.
What can you do as a conductor that you couldn't do simply as a composer?
Performance, in a word, Bob, performance. Part of the appeal for the audience, I think, is what the orchestra does. If we can make a rush up to a cut and suddenly suspend a chord in just a wonderful way, the audience gets something in the pit of their stomach that they feel. If that's not executed really very well, they're robbed of something.
Williams usually has only 5 or 6 weeks to write a full orchestral score for a film, the equivalent of about 60 minutes of music. And only on a well-budgeted film like Return of the Jedi does he have the luxury of enough time to make adjustments in the studio.
A little quicker and a little stronger from the cellos.
One of the Hollywood veterans who's helped oversee Williams' work from the beginning is Lionel Newman. For more than 40 years, the outspoken head of the 20th Century Fox music department.
If John Williams had written these scores as symphonic scores, if there had never been a film associated with them, would they still hold up?
Yeah, you're on a very touchy subject, because there's something, I don't know where the hell they come off, these critiques, because a man is a film composer. They look down on him, but John in his own right is a very good, serious composer. Serious we mean in the essence of, classical music. But because of Hollywood, they knock it out of him.
Once I left Hollywood in the early 60s, it took me a good 5 or 8 years before people forgave me.
Andre Previn is an old friend of Williams, who, since leaving Hollywood as a film composer, has become one of the world's best-known symphony conductors.
In the old days, my great problem that I found and shared with a lot of other composers is that you, to be blunt about it, you're working for idiots half the time. And it is very demeaning to spend hours, days, and weeks convincing a musical illiterate that what you've written really isn't so bad. Johnny is very fortunate because he is now so good and so successful that he picks and chooses not only the projects he works on, but the people for whom he works.
And Williams has collaborated with directors who've made blockbusters. Steven Spielberg, the director of Close Encounters, Jaws, E.T., and Raiders of the Lost Ark, has done all his major films with John Williams music.
This is The Unknown, The Planet.
The editor doesn't want his craft to be apparent. I don't think special effects want people to look and say, gee, what a great special effect. They'd like to believe what's happening is really photographable. I think it's the same way with music. We all don't want to be aware of the music, but we want to feel the music. Kind of the way you feel a bass drum at a parade. You can feel it in the pit of your stomach. I depend on music to help me get the audience to applaud. You know, there's a heroic moment. Harrison Ford jumps on his horse. He goes after the truck convoy in the Ark of the Covenant. He's on the top of the hill. He reins back the horse. The head of the horse goes into the air, and Johnny's trumpets are going full blast. His strings are fiddling away like crazy. It almost makes you come out of your seat. All the stars, all the planets line up according to plan. The music, in this case John Williams' music, is the final planet that causes the audience to, I think, do this.
What does Williams have to do before he can add that emotional surge? We're going to show you some of the steps he takes Photographed when he was planning the score for The Empire Strikes Back, the second Star Wars epic, with executive producer George Lucas.
Yeah. This is important in here.
First, there's what's called a spotting session.
That's the time when we look at the film, and it has no music in it, and we want to decide where in the picture to play music.
I love you.
I know.
What are you going to say?
And even just as importantly, where we're not going to play it.
Many of the musical phrases he writes must synchronize precisely with the number of frames of film in a scene. And he keeps a cue sheet to record those measurements.
It's a different process, really, than a composer working in an ivory tower, with the fact that you have to make a climax in exactly 16 seconds and draw out a preparatory phrase for a minute 21.3 seconds.
And there's also the question of texture. Should the notes be high or low, or long or short? What should the music say in addition to what the scene says? Watch this scene from The Empire Strikes Back, when a captured Han Solo is ordered placed in a carbon freezing chamber. You'll hear only the dialogue and some sound effects.
I love you.
I know.
Okay. Yes, please.
Now watch the same scene with John Williams' music, which adds to the bittersweet romantic feeling, even when the scene turns visually to conflict and fear.
I love you.
I know.
You wouldn't know it looking at John that he had the fiery, soul of the Stravinskys and Prokofievs of yesteryear. But he's that way. He's full of energy and full of a great musical confidence.
Williams has received 17 Academy Award nominations and 4 Oscars, most recently for the score of E.T. Achievements that represent countless hours spent alone in an almost monk-like existence, always under the pressure of time. Even while he was rehearsing for the summer season of the Boston Pops, he was also working on the score for Steven Spielberg's sequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark. He is married, but prefers to keep his personal life private. I think most musicians are introverted, he says. You spend so many hours from childhood practicing alone in a room.
A lot of times I write music. I'll fill up the paper with notes and come back the next morning and look at it, and it is as though someone else had written it. I look at that and say, I couldn't possibly have written all that. Certainly not yesterday. There wouldn't have been enough time. And also, I'm not a particularly religious man, but people ask me how you feel about inspiration, if I can claim to have had any of that good stuff. And I think it's there for all of us. I think the source of it is part of the wonder of the humanity that we share, that we all have these capacities, and the source for it all is infinite. This new trick of joining this with what we could do on film, with the colors and the rhythms and the visual, the excitement of that is very great for me.